What's going on, guys? Today we're going to do a little tech talk. We're going to be talking about Gen 3 versus Gen 4 LSs and that in-between stage where GM didn't know what the heck they were doing. So with that, let's get started. This is going to be a little knowledge that I know. Some of it might not be 100%. It's just what I've kind of learned over the past couple years messing with the LSs. If I'm wrong, correct me if you know better. Some people think they do, most don't. But we won't get into that. But today we're going to talk the big advantage of the Gen 4 versus the Gen 3, especially when it comes to the rods. Now, the earlier model GM LSs, the true LSs, the rods were definitely weak. The 5.3s, the Gen 3s definitely had the weaker rod. Some guys say they're still getting 800, horsepower, and they probably are, and they're probably holding. Some said they've made more on the Gen 3s, and yeah, they may have, but just because you're making it doesn't mean it's reliably making it. So that's one thing that you kind of got to learn throughout this. The motor sitting behind me, of course, it pulled out of the twin turbo Monty, was a Gen 3. It came out of a 2000, I think it was 2005, somewhere around there. Had 160,000 on it. I mean, I didn't do nothing to it, but it is a Gen 3 rod motor, so I have to kind of watch that, how much we push it. It also didn't have head studs or anything. That's another reason why I was watching as we pushed it, as much as we did. So I'm going to show you the big difference here between the Gen 4 and the Gen 3 rods real quick, so you can kind of see what the difference is, and I'm going to show you something so you know if you have a Gen 4 rod. So I have both of them sitting here. This rod is out of a Gen 4. It's a Gen 4 rod. It's kind of a Gen 4 block, but it's not. It's right there in the weird years where GM didn't really have an idea, I don't think, of what they were doing. And the reason I say that is the block uses the Gen 4 style head bolts, but the crank is still a 24X crank, where most of your Gen 4, true Gen 4s have the 58 tooth crank. The crank sensor, I think it's either the crank or cam sensor, is in the timing cover. It has the DOD and all that. Well, this is kind of a weird year of block that I have sitting in the back, and I've got a couple of them. I've got a Gen 4-ish, 3, 6-liter sitting in my work that has the same thing, but it has the Gen 4 rods, 24X crank, and I've got a 5.3 that's the same way that I've acquired, which I like because the fact that the car is going to be set up for the 24X reluctor ring on the crank. I don't want to get into the 58 yet because the electronics have to change based off 58 versus 24 or whatever. So this is your standard Gen 3 rod. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but if you look at them, you can see that the Gen 4 here is way thicker. The top of it, they look pretty close, but the Gen 4 right here and on the sides right here are definitely thicker. And just all around, it's a beefier rod. So I don't know if they weigh much different. I haven't weighed them or went into all that. Now I will say that this is a Gen 3 6-liter piston, but the rods interchange from 6 to, from my understanding, 6 to 5.3s or whatever. I could be wrong there, don't quote me. But but it's still a Gen 3 rod either way you go. This is the Gen 4 rod. If you look at the little dimple right there, that shows you that it is a Gen 4 rod. They are definitely way beefier than the Gen 3, so I can see why they hold more power. Most guys, what they do, and what I considered doing, but I'm kind of on the fence about it, we'll see what other people say, was taking the Gen 4 rods that I have here with the pistons for the 5.3 and just changing them straight out in this block. But to me, that I already have the other Gen 4-ish block back there that I could build. So it's kind of, I don't know if I want to do that or not, or if I just want to go ahead and freshen this one up, chuck it back in for now, which is probably what's going to happen. And then I'll build the Gen 4-ish block later. And the reason I say Gen 4-ish is because right there around 2006, 7, maybe even 5, I'm not 100% sure, GM did some weird things where the Gen 3 blocks have different rod or head bolts. So this is a Gen 3. Long head bolt, short head bolt. The Gen 4s have the same head bolt through all the main bolts. So that's kind of what makes it weird, is that this has a 24X crank. It has the head bolts that are all short and Gen 4 rods. So it's kind of like a weird year. I guess GM started switching the rods over. I guess that's what they started getting in, and they started switching them. So depending, it's kind of hard to even know exactly what years they came in, because I've had them from different years come with different rods and pistons. So it's kind of weird how all that worked. I think GM just kind of got confused at the time. But that's really the only big difference that makes the Gen 4 stronger, is mainly the rod. Some say the pistons. I haven't seen that much difference in the pistons. There's still a cast piston. Some people, the true LSs I think came with forged pistons, but it wasn't in the 5.3s and 6 liter as far as my knowledge goes. But that's what makes it really stronger. So if you get a Gen 4 that has the 24X crank, you get the bigger rods. And the bigger rods definitely hold more power. Now I'm seeing reliably all over the place 800 horsepower on the Gen 4 rods pretty easily. Some say they're pushing more than that. I don't know. LS World is kind of all over the place on as far as what they can and can't do, so it's kind of weird how that works. But guys, just if you're getting into this, that's kind of the big difference between Gen 4 and Gen 3s. If you hear people talking about it, that's kind of that's the main difference that I've seen. When you get into 08, that's when you get into from my knowledge, because I have an 08 truck, that's when you get into your DOD system that drops the cylinders, and you get into where I can't remember if I think it's the crank sensor is in a different spot, and maybe it's the cam, I don't remember. It's one of the two, but I don't know enough about those yet. So guys, if you're messing with those, let me know that you're, tell me more about them. I don't know a whole lot about them. I work on them here and there. I know they drop lifters pretty bad with the DOD system activated. That's why I try not to mess with them. Plus, everything I have is Gen 3 style with the 24X crank. So all my electronics are set up for 24X crank, and I plan on keeping it that way for now. So guys, with that, that's just a little tech, with you, to kind of help some of these guys out that are maybe just getting into it. And I know technically the 5.3s and 6 liters are not true LSs, guys. I'm well aware. But as far as the LS World is concerned, the 5.3s and 6 liters are still LSs, pretty much. Some guys argue with it. Your opinion is your opinion. That's okay. So guys, with that, if you have any questions, let me know. If you have any knowledge beyond mine, which a lot of people do when it comes to LSs. I'm just starting to really get into them. So if you have any questions, if you have something else you want to add or tell me that maybe I don't know, let me know. But guys, I appreciate it. Look for me on Instagram, MontyGuy90. Just keep watching. I appreciate it. Until next time, we'll see you later.